Let the dragon consume you! Enemy sighted. Stop the payload! Stop the payload! In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we're back. So, welcome to this episode of the Birdwatchers. This is episode 55. I'm your host, Ryan, and this episode will be going through Stage 4, Week 3. So, for news, we got two bits here. Watch parties are back. We're starting off with the Washington Justice on 8/16. That's going to be Friday. That was going to start at 6 p.m. And then we're following up Sunday with the on 8/18, which is at 2 p.m. versus the London Spitfire. And both of those will be at the home base at Banter. So come hang out and come help us join on this team, because we got to keep this run going into the playoffs, right? Looks like we're in a good spot, but I think we have a chance of cracking that top 6. So we'll see if we can pull that off. But outside of that, as far as actual game news, we had Rollock Beta go live. So now it's on the live servers, no longer on PTR. The one difference, though, is that I guess they decided not to release the quick play aspect of Rollock, which is kind of interesting. So you still have normal quick play. You can pick anything you want. That could be possible to Sigma being live. So they want, enough people to have a chance to play him. I don't know. I mean, with Rollock, that still works. So that's not really a valid excuse. But we'll see if they ditch that whole idea together, if they put it in arcade, or if they do swap it out like they said they might. So yeah, that stands to be seen. But let's hop into it for this week. So we're going to start with standings. And with standings, not as many upsets as the last week, but still a couple showstoppers, right? We had a lot of long games this week, a lot of games that went the distance as teams fight for that spot in the playoffs. So we start off Thursday with Spitfire versus Titans. And, this is a game that we're going to talk about this week. This is a game we're going to start off with. We're only doing 2 games. We're not doing more than that. They do go the distance, though, so they're definitely full of excitement, especially some of our more exciting games of the week, to say the least. But yeah, that's the game we're going to talk about. Then we had Paris Eternal versus Philadelphia Fusion. Paris Eternal took that 3-2, which was surprising, right? Because they've played in the past and it didn't turn out that way. But hey, it's the end of the season, so anything can happen as teams try to get a spot. Even though Paris Eternal, I'm pretty sure, is out of the contention here, where Fusion kind of has to be careful with their play for the remainder of this season to make sure they get in the playoffs. But we have Florida Mayhem next versus Defiant. Florida Mayhem winning this 3-1. They decided they wanted to start winning games at the end of the season. I know it's a joke, but it could be good for the next season. So we'll see how that pans out, and if that team sticks, if they do some wild shift, which you're known for, or whatever. Then we had Charge versus Dynasty, and we had Charge winning this 3-2. Another surprise here. Charge has been doing good in certain spots, but then dropping the ball. I don't know what to think here. Dynasty, I don't see Dynasty making it into the playoffs. With the experimentation they did kind of mid-season versus now, everybody thought they were kind of preparing one team for this meta. They haven't been performing with that squad, so it's almost backfiring, or maybe this is a long-term plan. Hey, who knows? The follow-up game was Uprising versus Justice. Justice winning 3-1. Justice has been on a tear up to this point, and who knows? I never thought that Corey and Stratus as a combo would be that deadly, especially in this Season 2 version of the Overwatch League, where all the stakes are higher, right? All the players are better, but they're definitely stepping up and surprising everybody, and they're fun to watch. Those are 2 guys that, it further emphasizes my point of, not just skill, they're skilled, right? But personality. Both those guys have personality. You can see them having fun. They get the rest of their team riled up. That's an important trait that I hope a lot of teams see. You don't want this kind of all quiet team. I'm looking at you, Philadelphia, but you want to have personality. You need that personality on the team. And it shows here because people enjoy watching them play. I mean, yeah, they're winning, but even before this, when they start bringing this combo and testing it out, they're fun guys. So that's important. We then have Dallas Fuel versus Gladiators. Gladiators take this one 3-2. Like I said, Gladiators are always dangerous. I'm always kind of rooting for them, even if we're playing against them, right? But yeah, they get the win here. Fuel's pretty much out of it. There are a couple articles that came out about their coaching strategies, kind of new stuff they're doing, kind of innovating stuff they're doing. And some people are asking, are those things beneficial? Because it's not really turning into a performance that's worth the effort. But, we'll see. They do have a lot of coaches too, and that's a weird structure. But we'll see what they do moving into the next season. We have Shock next versus Dragons, and Dragons lose. We have Shock winning 3-1 here. Dragons were on a tear. They're kind of doing what the Justice were doing, with more, they're winning, but then they kind of became dominant out of nowhere, and they petered out again. So I guess it's more similar to what Spark was doing, as far as wins were concerned and performance. Then Saturday, we had Hangzhou Spark versus New York Excelsior. This is going to be another game we're going to talk about today. I kind of wanted to focus this week on the Giants and the big players and see what they've been up to as they get ready to go in the playoffs, since a lot of them are either in that top 6 or top 12 spot. So they have a chance to get there, or they're either locked in the top 6 or they have a chance to play in. But yeah, so we're talking about that one, so no score there. Then we had Houston Outlaws, and this is Saturday, by the way. We had Houston Outlaws versus Spitfire. Spitfire taking this 3-1. Then we had Dynasty versus Defiant. Dynasty taking this 2-1. Florida Mayhem versus Los Angeles Valiant. We had a draw in this match, so only 2-1 in Valiant's favor. Valiant's been kind of on and off. Not as bad of an on and off than Outlaws. I think Outlaws kind of put themselves out. But yeah, Valiant looking good here. Hunters versus Spark were next, and Spark took this one 3-1. So Spark's getting these wins they need towards the end here to make sure they make playoffs. They did have that poor performance at the beginning, and then they had a weird performance in the middle, but somehow they got the wins they needed and squeezed out those games. So they look like they're on a good streak here to make it. Then we move into Sunday. We had Fusion versus Titans. Titans dominate here, 4-0. Their record's still insane. Then we have Justice versus Outlaws. Like I said, Justice maintains this streak here, and that game was actually really good to watch. Outlaws put up a fight, but they're not really a clutch team at this moment. They're kind of random in their performance. So it's very hard to gauge like what their plan is. But Justice just looked dominant with that duo. And you also have people like Sam showing up on Diva, and Guido once again on healing is doing a great job. Him and Arc, because if you remember correctly, and this is a stat you don't want to forget now that we're in this 2-2-2 roll lock situation. Arc was up there for the least amount of deaths last year. I think he was up there with Nuss, and that's important here, especially when you have a dominant duo that's killing everything. So if you're a healer known for not dying and your DPS are good at killing, that's a good formula to get you through. No complaints there. So we follow up with San Francisco Shock versus Fuel, 4-0 here, no surprise. And then Charge versus New York Excelsior, and this was surprising because Charge roll over New York Excelsior 4-0. New York is going to make it, right? That's not the question, but the question people always have is, how are they going to do in the playoffs? But we've never really asked how they're doing in the main season, right? In the regular season, and they've been dropping games here and there recently, which you're not seeing from the Titans or the Shock. Yes, they'll lose games in the playoffs, like here and there, but they've still been performing there, and they're still performing in the regular season. So that kind of puts Excelsior in that weird 3rd or 4th spot in performance, or even lower now, because they're human. Maybe it's our fault for beating them twice. That kind of gave them this mystique of, that took away the mystique and the lore of being able to play them. Maybe there's not that fear anymore that you still have when playing the Titans and Shock. I'm not sure, but I mean, they're still a great team. Like, Nene is, we're going to talk about him because they've been putting him in more again, and it's pretty much worth it. Let's get into it. Let's start our matches. So we're starting with Titans versus Spitfire here. And in general, this one, we have Titans starting Stitch in the lineup today. And that's possibly because they didn't have much luck with Hureg before, with Hureg before. And then you have, the married man himself, SBB, which is his pool has always come into contest as far as, okay, we know he's a great tracer, but the rest of the stuff he plays and the rest of the things we need from him can be varying. So they go with Stitch because Stitch did show up in the last game. So we start on Busan. So Mecha Base is our first round here, and this is a one-sided affair, right? Spitfire are very favored in this one, and they make Mecha Base look very easy, and they take this one convincingly. And then we move to downtown for our next round, and this round is almost a clone of the first one, with Spitfire continuing to dominate. I can't speak today. But yeah, they take this round, gives them the map, and they start off the series 1-0. We then move to Temple of Anubis, one of the most hated maps in America, or in the world. I guess this is an international league, right? And we have guard subbing in for Birdring, which is something they've been trying here, playing around with how guard can fit into the roster and what he can do. And Spitfire up here, so you can sub in and see what happens. We have Spitfire on attack, and we start with Genji, Sombra Genji Dive Mirror, which is something we don't see much of yet. You're still seeing a couple of Genjis, but not the Sombra Genji mix. People are kind of coming away from Sombra since she was mainly around to deal with goats and to kind of, I don't know, put them on the back foot with the EMP and with the hacks and to allow you to get damage through. You don't really need that anymore since we have roll lock, but she still has a purpose, right? Being able to lock out people out of their abilities, as you can tell by the patch changes that came out this week, it's valuable. But yeah, they start with this mirror, and then Spitfire cap point 1 quickly, but they struggle on point 2. And then once Titans swap to Hawksalt to Doomfist, Spitfire get held here. So Titans go next, and they also get a quick point 1 on their attack, and they almost snowball point 2, but drop that initial fight, and this means that they have to make a couple more attempts to be able to get that cap on the back of a nano blade to win this map, which is a strategy that's older than time. Is just, if you have the time in your bank, wait it out, get the nano blades, see if the defensive team can deal with it, and then snowball. We move to Hollywood next is our map. So Titans take that map, right? They tie this one up 1-1. We move to Hollywood, and Spitfire kind of show up again. We have Titans on attack. Titans do get to play Genji with Hangzhou here, and this is because they have Stitch in the lineup outside of the other two options, but unfortunately it doesn't really lead to any progress on point 1. Titans actually get full held, which is interesting considering the momentum of the last game. And then Spitfire go on attack, and they have that momentum here, and they carry it throughout. They take advantage of it, and Spitfire only win one fight. That's all they need, right? And then they cap and win the map, and they go up in this series 2-1. So this then takes us to our map of the match. And I say map of the match because this one's actually really exciting to watch. The rest of the games are, you have these dominant variants of either Spitfire is dominant or Titans are dominant. And, like I said before in previous episodes, these are two teams that are coming off of a disappointing week, right? You had Titans losing to Justice handedly, and then you had Spitfire losing to Mayhem, which were two bottom teams that are now performing a lot better. Yes, it's a different meta, but it's kind of, a hit to your morale to be two of the dominant teams to lose to those guys. So they both have something to prove, and they're proving it against each other in this match. So they're taking this role of dominance each map. But yeah, we're on Route 66. We start with Spitfire and attack. And Spitfire have to break through this aggressive defense from Titans, which is becoming a trend. And they don't get the cart moving very far until like about over 2 minutes on the clock. But once they do get it moving, they have a great follow-up fight and a huge Hangzhou Dragon ult from Birdring. And this continues through point 2 and point 3. So it goes smoothly. They get the full cap with about 46 seconds remaining. And then Titans go on attack. And Spitfire tries similar aggressive defense to start. Like I said, it's becoming a trend, but it's not as effective as when the Titans do it. And they're easily able to move through point 1, point 2 because of it. But on point 3, it becomes a problem as Spitfire put their foot down and they don't really get around that corner very easily. Then Titans have this amazing last attempt. And this is why, this is one of the big reasons I made this the map of the match, is because of this moment here. So definitely go watch it. It's the last attempt, and after it's super hype, and they're able to cap and take us to round 2, which shouldn't have happened based on this interaction at the end, but it's really cool. So we're going to move round 2, and then both teams only have about a minute here, and Titans go first, and Titans start the same way they did the first time, rolling through point 1, point 2 easily before being stopped close to point 3. And this is another insane push. Another reason I made this the map of the match, for the little bit of time they had, because the whole time from point 1 onwards, they were in overtime. They only had a minute. And this took us to Spitfire, who goes next, and they cave to the pressure of trying to match the Titans' performance. They, don't have much success with that initial aggressive defense at the beginning. They do cap point 1, but they get held soon after, and Titans win this one, taking us to a tiebreaker. So this was 2-2. Sorry. So then we go to our control map, and our control map this time is Ilios. So we start with the ruins, and this is I've never done this before, but this is the round of the match, right? So this is ruins, and this round is absolutely insane because from beginning to end, it's a back and forth the whole time, and Titans are able to end up clutching out the final fight and take this one, taking us to Lighthouse, which I thought, okay, that momentum pretty much that should deter the Spitfire and bring down their motivation, but they don't. They step up and they control this round completely through. This is pretty dominant on Lighthouse, which takes us to the actual final round, which is and this is a final round, and that Titans are dominant on. They step it up and they win this round, and they add another win to their amazing record. I think there's something in, they've only lost 3 games, 2 or 3 games, I can't remember. The verdict, of this is that it's not really special, but it should always be kept in mind that the Titans are a clutch team. It reminds me of Philadelphia, like the second half of last season, where they still kind of do it, where they go to game 5s and they push these teams to the edge, and then they end up winning out. Boston kind of did it as well earlier in the seasons then. But yeah, it was an interesting match to watch these two guys go to each other. Nothing really on the line here. I'm pretty sure both these teams are set to go to the playoffs as long as they just play through without any major 0-7 performance, which none of these guys are on. They've all won games during this stage. This takes us to our next match, which is going to be Excelsior versus Spark. And this one was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Excelsior's kind of been in this spot where either they perform like we expect them to perform, or they give away games. But this is one where it goes the distance. So we start with Ilios, which is our control map. We start on and Excelsior looks strong. They start strong, they maintain the advantage, and they take this round due to Nene's insane Widow performance. This is the kind of stuff you're scared of running into on ladder, or it feels like you run into in lower ranks when you have a Smurf on the other team who's playing Widow, and they're just it doesn't matter if you poke your head out, you're dead. It's that simple. So they take we go to Lighthouse, and Excelsior has a similar start, and this time Nene's on Doomfist, but he's still very dangerous. He's doing a great job of confirming kills, which I always talk about is important, is that you can do all the damage in the world, but if nobody dies, you're not winning. You have to get the kills, and he's helping to make sure that happens. So this leads to this round win and this map win, and Excelsior go up 1-0. We go to Volskaya next, and we start with Excelsior on attack. Excelsior cap point, and after the first fight, after the first fight attempt, they cap it, but they have a tough time on point 2 and are only able to cap in overtime. This is a lot due to the organization and the good positioning from the Spark. After every time they get the kills, they confirm, they use Maywall, they get everybody up to that platform that's in the front left of point 2 from the defensive standpoint, and then they just wait. And they kind of route the New York Excelsior where they want to go. They jump down. It's very methodical, and New York's having a tough time dealing with it until overtime, where they kind of pop off and get the picks they need to score. And then Spark go next on attack, and they have similar to Excel. They get point 1 quickly, with Godsby looking very good on Hangzhou. And those are the 2 players to watch this game, are Nene and Godsby, because they're both performing very well. Just Nene's kind of edging him out in certain instances, more often than not. But yeah, Godsby looking good on the Hangzhou, helps with point 1 cap. Then Spark used the momentum and obliterate point 2 with more than 3:30 on the clock. So that's a good on their part. So he moved to round 2, and Excelsior didn't have any extra time, so they don't get an attempt. So the only attempt you get is going to be out of the Spark, and in round 2, and Spark is able to use the spawn advantage to win these extended fights. They have 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Excuse me. They have 3 minutes and 30 seconds, so they can just play the economy war, work that, and they end up actually capping at some point, and they tie it up 1-1. So now this takes us to our map of the match for this game, and this is Hollywood. And Excelsior start on attack. Excelsior start with what looks like what I like to call Dive 2.0, right? It's not really like a variant of Dive. They kind of replace 2 characters. So in 2.0, you have Doomfist instead of Tracer, and you have Hammond instead of Winston. And this is kind of because, remember, when those characters came out, Doomfist and Hammond, Dive was kind of a back thought, right? We haven't seen it in so long. There were certain niche times where teams would crack it out, but it wasn't around really in any prevalence. So now you have these 2 characters, and teams are playing with different versions of Dive. And there's, they have an easier time going through point 2 than they do point 1. Point 1, they struggle until, they kind of brute force it with this dive comp. Point 2, they just cruise through, but they have they have a little amount of time left remaining at the point 3 point that they don't really have more. I think they get like 2 fight attempts, and they do get the cart fairly far. They get pretty close to point 3. So this then takes us to Spark on attack, and Spark catch Jonak in a completely out of position, which results in a quick pick point 1 for them capture, which helps because New York struggled previously. So they move steadily through point 2 after that, and then they have to fight a bit for point 3, but are able to after a couple fights and Excelsior stepping off the point, they're able to cap. I don't know if it was a C9. It was more of a case where they were in stall mode on the New York side, and they just kind of messed up communication. So somebody stepped off, they scored, match or round over. So they go up 2-1 in Spark's favor. And this takes us to Junkertown, and we start with Excelsior on attack again. And Excelsior absolutely roll through this map. This is a very dominant performance at the beginning here, without the cart actually stopping, I don't think. And Nene is just popping off. He starts off on Widow. He's getting headshots, like I said. Widow's great on that first point because of how open everything is. So if you have someone who can land the shots, it's in your advantage. So pops off on Widow, swaps to Reaper, and continues to do so. And part of it is him just playing well, New York just playing well and communicating. But the other part is Spark seem kind of out of position, and their decision making is off as New York gets that momentum, so they can't really take it back. So New York gets a full score here, or it's through all points. Spark goes next on attack, and Spark struggle through this whole map, but are able to cap during the last fight attempt to push it to round 2. And I was going to give this one map of the match originally, but the only thing that held it back was just Spark's performance wasn't as good as the previous map, so it didn't really balance out. We do go to round 2 though, and this is kind of interesting because we have another aggressive defense because they're both at Spark has to go first, and they only have a minute, so they have no choice, right? And after almost getting a 0 cart movement, which can happen, so on these maps, if you play aggressive like this, say they don't move the cart, right, and then your team gets held, you can actually get a draw. It's the only way to really get a draw on this map. But unfortunately, they do get the cart moving, and they're able to get the cart close to point 1 on the Spark side. And then Excelsior go next, and they have to break through that aggressive defense because, like I said, Spark has no choice but to do aggressive or go aggressive. But they have plenty of time to do so, right? They have plenty of time in the time bank, so they grind it out, and then they follow up with a Nene flank to seal the deal and to tie the series up 2-2. So this takes us to our tiebreaker with Li Jiang. We start on Garden and Excelsior. We get a mirror match of this Reaper, May, Orisa, Diva, Moira, Lucio, which is good for control maps. And New York is better on control maps usually. We'll see if that plays out. But yeah, so Excelsior get to 91% before Spark finally get a flip. So it's in New York's favor. But Excelsior eventually win the fight they need, and then they take this round. We then move to Command Center, and Spark are able to get 99% first this round. But Excelsior have a better usage for the remainder of better usage of alts for the remainder of the round. So they take economy, and they end up taking this one away from Spark and the whole match away from Spark, and they win it. So the verdict for this one is just Nene was absolutely a force in this match. We know how good his Zarya is. It's kind of been on and off since they've been subbing him in and out to see his performance on other characters in this new meta. And one thing to mention, like I said, Godspeed did great, but he wasn't really able to carry his team as Nene did, because Nene was just an absolute maniac this whole game. which was great to watch. So that's it for this week. This was kind of a fast one. Both these games did go the distance. Like I said, most games did go the distance. And we're starting to get a lot more game fives because everything's on the line. This is the end of the season and playoffs couldn't be any sooner. We have a homestand coming up, I think, next week, the LA one. And I know for Atlanta, we have back-to-back double-header weeks, and that's going to be interesting to see how you prepare for that. We have momentum. People are scared to play us, so that works in our favor. But we do face the justice, like the new justice, which is, has me kind of shaking in my boots. But as usual, you can reach me at Gmail at thebirdwatcherspodcast@gmail.com. I'm always active on Twitter at podcasttbw. I'm always active on Reddit as well, the competitive Overwatch Reddit. I got it right this time, right? If you're not following, follow. If you haven't joined. The Birdwatchers podcast on that, so you'll see me posting around. And then on YouTube, so as I always say, YouTube Premium is becoming bigger. I know our podcast, the podcast is on every other platform, but we're also on there if you want to listen. Or if you want to have it on the video and have it in the background, it has a little graphic playing. So you can check it out there on YouTube, and that's just the Birdwatchers. So subscribe, follow, comment on there. Or you can go on iTunes and, review and comment there as well. It's always appreciated, the feedback, because people are awesome. It's great to see people on Reddit, keep it up. They like the quality. I appreciate that, with all the effort that goes into this thing. So, I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the new format. I know we kind of shifted, throughout the, almost 2 years now, but, we're going to keep it going. But yeah, so until next time, as always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next episode.
I have destroyed more of your kind than I can count.
You were given those guns to toss them around like trash.
I don't take lessons from you.
Try not to get us killed.